We have to have a presentation of the gospel, but we also have to have presence of Almighty God working with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Wednesdays with Wimber. I am Luke Garrity, a pastor theologian here in Northern California, and I'm joined with my friend Steve Burnhope, Dr. Steve Burnhope. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
You've obviously been on the channel quite a bit, and I've noticed that you're always wearing a pink sweater or shirt.
Pure coincidence.
Yeah, pure coincidence. So, hey, the last episode of Wednesdays with Wimber, I had a box reveal where we opened up a bunch of content from my friend Les Yoder that he sent that was all from Wimber. In fact, there were a whole bunch of these booklets. There's a couple that we're going to talk about in a couple videos today. But, you know, I was thinking about there's this reoccurring theme in John Wimber's ministry, and I've read a ton of different books on John Wimber. I'd like to say I've read all the books on John Wimber that I'm aware of, but he was so focused on equipping the saints. Talk about that. You know, you served as a vineyard pastor, and you now are currently serving as an interim senior pastor of a vineyard church, and you've written a lot on vineyard things. How important is equipping the saints?
Well, it must continue to be really, really important because it's the whole sense of discipleship. And equipping the saints is a great Wimberism kind of phrase that's really helpful. But the question is, what does that now look like today compared to maybe 30 years ago? Is it the same? Has it shifted? Is it easier? Is it more difficult? What areas do we need to think about now compared to then? And a whole lot of other questions that come with, you know, that was then and this is now.
Yeah,
I think we need to explore those.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about how there used to be a lot of booklets.
Yeah,
there were booklets. If you went to a Wimber conference, you walked away with tapes, eventually CDs. Now there'd be downloads, you know, MP3 downloads, but lots of booklets with essays and articles from books. Yeah. So it seems that the John Wimber ministry focused on putting out products that people would read.
Yes, and that last piece is the problem today, isn't it? No one reads anything. Okay, so what?
Ouch.
What? Well, I do. You
Oh,
do.
yeah. Sometimes.
You know, everyone watching does. We know everyone here.
Of course.
Does. Yeah, of
no one in this conversation would not do that. But keep going.
No. But you know, reading isn't tweets, right?
Yeah.
Reading isn't Facebook. But most people spend most of their time reading that kind of short-potted stuff.
Yeah. Easily digestible. Yes. Scrolling information.
Yeah. But are they really imbibing, you know, meals that are nutritious, or is it just like
snacks,
bits of candy?
Yeah, snacks. Okay. Well, let's think about that. So, you know, backing up, John Wimber, his primary focus for a lot of his ministry was to equip the saints, which is taken right out of Ephesians chapter 4. The idea of the church leaders having a functional role to equip the church to, number one, carry out the work of ministry, and to build up the church. Like they were supposed to go on training, be trained to train, be built up to build up, equipped to be equipped.
Yes.
You know, so that's always been at the genetic code of John Wimber connected churches. Fair?
Yeah, totally. And to be able to reproduce stuff and get the saints doing the stuff and not just have the minister, you know, or the guy on the stage doing the stuff. So I think that's really important. I mean, equipping the saints has to go beyond simply showing them how to pray for someone for healing, although that's obviously important. It's also got to go beyond that into areas of discipleship and ministry more broadly. And I think that the challenge we have today is whilst we can relatively easily train people to do the ministry times, are we finding the time and space and the opportunities and the contexts in which to be able to help them to be equipped in other areas of discipleship?
Oh, gotcha.
So I would say in the church that I pastored for many years, the biggest single challenge we had, and maybe my biggest single failure, was achieving discipleship throughout the church to a significant degree.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that seems to be a challenge for a lot of us in the church in general, across the spectrum of different denominations and movements. But so there's probably a lot of not debate, but there's probably a lot of different ideas on how to equip the saints today. I mean, I think in one way, this YouTube channel has been an attempt to, my goal is to help expose people to a lot of John Wimber's thinking, because it was so influential, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and still is today for many of us. But might there be other ways to communicate? So you have podcasts now.
Yep.
What are some other ways that you could see the churches, not just denominations, but churches trying to equip the saints? What would be some practical ways to do that?
To me, I think that the challenge is not so much how do we convey information. Podcasts, videos, and so forth are able to do that. I think that the problem we've got is that there is so much out there, and the average Christian, the average church member, almost doesn't know where to start in terms of what do I look at, what do I watch, what do I read, because there's just so much to choose from. And the benefit of communications and living in a communications era is that it's all out there, and it's very hard to filter it into the stuff that's helpful and unhelpful. I get lots of questions from people in the church about, who should I be watching and who shouldn't I be watching, and how do I know whether something is good or not good? And that's really quite a challenge. But the other problem, I think, is that if all we ever imbibe is stuff, that's on video and such like, we become very individualistic. We've got to get people together, and do stuff together and talk together and, be involved together, and finding the time for people to do that is very difficult. So they can listen to a podcast on their phone, on their commute, maybe, but that's very individualistic, and it's not achieving the kind of community learning that I think we would have expected to have happened in small groups and midweek groups and weekend conferences and so on in years gone by, maybe in John's era.
Yeah. So what I kind of can maybe parse out of that as we wrap this up is there needs to be a commitment to discern, what kind of content we should be consuming.
And provide guidance.
Yeah. I mean, so as equippers, we need to help people discern what kind of stuff to consume. There needs to be community involved in the equipping process. I think of like John Wimber doing these conferences on equipping the church to pray for healing. There has to be someone to pray for, to try it out, right?
Indeed, and someone to watch while you do it, and then they... Yeah,
that's the replication process. And then third is prioritizing it. I think as followers of Jesus, as equippers, we need to help people understand why it needs to be a priority, to set aside the time for regular gatherings, conferences, things like that. So, those three things, discernment, community, and priority, seem to be kind of a thing that we can take from John Wimber and apply it into the church, our local churches today. Is that fair?
Certainly, I would say so.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for watching this video. I'd like to encourage you to subscribe, like, share, leave comments below if you have questions or comments for either myself or Steve. I want to also encourage you to check out Steve Burnhope's works. He's written a number of books. You can see those in the description below. They're fantastic books, have been really helpful for me and for many other people in the churches that I'm connected to. So have a great day, and we'll see you next Wednesday.